I was 1-11, went to 13-0 at Western Michigan. I'm coming off a 13-1 season, just lost in the Cotton Bowl. And you're sitting there saying, wow, it took this long. I'm a really good coach, man, coach of the year. And then bang, you walk into Minnesota and nobody cares. We have a divided team. They're boycotted the bowl game. There's
Yeah.
a big sexual assault case. Half the team showed up to the first team meeting. I remember going back to the hotel night one, and I told Heather, I'm like, did I do the right thing? I mean, oh my, did I make the biggest mistake of my life? And again, power of prayer. A few things happened that over the next few days, and I was like, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
Hey, teammates, welcome back to another episode of It's All About the Team. And I'm so fortunate today to have one of the great ones in the game of college football with us, Coach PJ Fleck of the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Welcome, PJ.
When you row a boat, your back's to the future. You row in the present, but you look at the past, which is the only thing you can't change, but you can learn from.
And the great thing about our governor, Governor DeWine, we hear 1,000 times a day, I want every single Ohioan to reach their God-given potential.
There's two things that create a locker room, is empathy and gratitude. And then I go play in the NFL, which was the longest shot of the longest shot. They spelled my name wrong. In fact, the day I got there, Fleck's not that hard to spell, but when it's Fleck, that's even worse. Coach Tressel, it's always great to see you, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, I tell you what, looking forward to it. We've had a lot of fun having people come on from athletics and business and healthcare and military and so forth to just talk about the lessons they learned in building teams. And usually what I try to do is I try to, ask questions, pepper the guest with what were the various lessons they learned along the way. But I want to kind of flip how I do it today, because one of the lessons I learned way back was from Coach John Wooden. And he said, drink deeply from good books. And so one of the good books that I wanted to talk about was Row the Boat. And when I had a chance to read your book, it really reminded me that as you were progressing through your coaching career, then all of a sudden you became a head coach. You had to decide how you were going to kind of be the captain of the ship, if you will. And I was so impressed with this. And so could you share with our viewers a little bit about Row the Boat, how it became the foundational block, just like our Block O of life was, or our winner's manual at Ohio State and Youngstown State? And how did that come about in your program?
Yeah, thanks for asking me that. First of all, I got an 18 on the ACT, and I think I got like a 17 on the reading and writing. So it's a really short book, and it's easy for anybody to read. And that was the point.
Yep.
I think when I look back at even my head coaching career, 13 years now into it, you look back at year one, and I was 1-11. We were not very good. We should have been 0-12. I was divorced. It was a really hard time in my life. And it took me back to a time in my life on February 9th, 2011. My second son, Colton, lost his life to a heart condition right after birth. And, he's still the only person I've ever met that has lived a perfect life. Mm. And I remember as I held him as he passed away, because I was the last one to hold him. And I made a promise to him that, I'm going to do something to make sure you weren't strong enough to live your life, but we're going to create something in your name that allows you to impact so many lives. Because when I look back at my life, I'm only where I am because of so many people like yourself, Coach, that impacted my life. But it wasn't going to be just about football. It was going to be about, when I became a head coach, how can I impact a community and bring people together and give them a visual of what that looks like. And it took a while to actually come up with it. But then once I got to Western Michigan, I kind of unveiled it. Nobody really knew much about it. But it gives you a visual immediately, because it all goes back to our nursery rhymes of, row, row, row your boat. Everybody knows that. Yeah. And when you row a boat, you're all aligned. I think it's different than being on the same page. There's a lot of words and different letters put together on the same page. But when you're aligned, everybody's rowing the boat in the same direction. Everybody has to be doing it at the same speed. We all do it a little bit different, which makes us human beings, but we all have to do it together. And that's where it came from. It just means never give up. That's really what it means. We're one of the only college football programs slogan who's directly tied to charity as well. So everything Row the Boat goes to the Masonic Children's Hospital here on campus. And I think some people, when you create something of your own, think like it's just all about you, and it's not. In fact, it's all about other people and making their lives better. And we use it as a never give up mantra with our football team. And I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit more, but there's an oar, a boat, and a compass. And when you row a boat, your back's to the future. You row in the present, but you look at the past, which is the only thing you can't change, but you can learn from. So it's a great life analogy. It's very simple that everybody can see it, but very difficult to accomplish.
Well, as you talk about how it came about, we've had so many of our guests, and I can tell you myself personally that our hardest times, both personally and professionally, taught us the lessons that propelled us into the future to figure out who we were and how we wanted to be a part of a group, and how we wanted to make an impact, and how we wanted to make a difference. And I would urge everybody that has ever watched It's All About the Team. It is a short book, and I was a math guy. I was not a English and history guy, although I love history now. This is a great read. I think it can make an impact on your team, on your family, on your organization, on your community, and so what I always like to have our guests think through is, as you mentioned, we're an accumulation of experiences, things that we've watched, things that we've learned from, things that we've decided that we wanted to be a part of us, and other things we've decided, I'm not going to do it that way because that doesn't fit who I am. And, you're just finishing up spring practice here. This is the 2025 version of the Gophers. Different than any other version. You've got to have your own signature, and you learn that through your experiences. So take us back to growing up in Illinois. What lessons about team did you learn from Team Fleck?
Yeah, that's a great question. From a very young age, I learned that it's not about you. It's about how you impact and how you connect with the rest of the team. Not only that, how do you make your teammates better? And I was always challenged as a young player. I didn't play football till my eighth grade year, but I was always playing up. And one of the lessons I learned in always playing up is when you do play up, there's somebody's spot you're taking. And there's somebody not very happy about that position. And you can either resist that and see that as detrimental to the team, and you can be part of the problem, or you can be part of the solution. And I still remember playing varsity as freshmen in a lot of different sports, and my parents took a lot of stuff in the crowd. I took a lot of stuff on the court, even from our own teammates. And I was like, you know what? This isn't what a team is. It's
Mm.
not about just your individual performance, or it's about what's truly best for the team. And I think it's really hard to get young people to see that whatever's best for the team will be better for you when we're kind of in this world. So I think I always had to learn how to play up, know what was going to come my way, how people were going to react, what the external factors were going to be that were going to come my way, and be able to process that within myself to know that I could help the team at a young age, even though maybe everybody was looking at me like maybe he can't, he shouldn't be here, he shouldn't be taking my son's senior spot. Some of the teammates maybe weren't necessarily really good teammates. And I didn't want to be that way. And I wanted to find ways to connect those people. Again, I probably had more negative experiences than positive experiences when you are playing up, not only with the competition, but also maybe your own team. And then when I got to college, I only had one scholarship offer. I'm 5'9". I was 160 pounds out of high school. Had a bunch of state records in receiving, but I didn't get any offers, and I didn't run really well. But I went to camp, and I remember they went to Joe Novak's football camp at Northern Illinois. And this was a camp, Coach Tressel, as you remember. You're practicing 3 times a day. You're in
Yeah.
full pads. You pay $400. You stay overnight for 3, 4 days. You probably practice training camp style practices for 10 times, and you pay for it. This isn't like you pay $40 to get everybody to look at you and get a T-shirt and get all this
Right.
recruiting, blah, blah, and everybody tell us how good you are. This was 10 practices of like legit 2-a-day practices. And it taught me that you have to experience me to get me. And I still use that to this day. We don't
Mm.
really offer many kids until you come to camp and I witness how you do it. because what I did maybe wasn't as impressive, but it was how I did it that maybe impressed people. I could do it for longer. I had great stamina. I had never give up type mentality. I would never quit. I was the king of the twos, too small, too short, too young. But you'd have to fight me for 24 hours.
Yep.
And I just didn't go away. I was like one of those just gnats. And I think at the time, Northern Illinois was on one of the longest losing streaks in the country.
Mm.
And I think they said, you know what? This porridge is just right for us because one, we'll offer him, two, he'll definitely commit. And we want to build around this type of how. And if you look at the players I played with, Thomas Hammock, who's a head coach at Northern Illinois, Nick Duffy, who's really successful in the financial world, we all had that how, which was the effort, the unconquerable will, that mentality, that necktie mentality. And I think that's what Joe Novak was looking for. And we do that to this day. And then I go play in the NFL, which was the longest shot of the longest shot. They spelled my name wrong. In fact, the day I got there, Fleck's not that hard to spell, but when it's Flack, that's even worse. My name already means speck of dust, let alone spell it wrong. You're 14 out of 14 on the depth chart. The only way to move is up. And one by one, you're not comparing yourself and competing against those people. Uh, it taught me that I have to compete with myself every day because three parts of competition are with, within, and against. And against is for game day, and I get that. But this was about me, my dream, my hope, my aspiration, and that was going to be my biggest challenge. Was I going to be able to overcome myself every single day? And I think looking at those roles, at least in football, and thinking back to a young student athlete, it goes all the way back to my childhood. We didn't come from much, but my dad would tell me you never quit anything that you start, and it doesn't matter. I mean, Coach Tressel, I can't make a campfire. I don't like tents. I don't like to camp outside. I don't like bugs, but I had to be a Boy Scout all the way up to Eagle Scout.
Hmm.
And before my dad let me say, okay, you can just focus on sports. And I must have been the worst person to be in the woods with, but he wouldn't let me quit it.
Yep. Well, I think about your story about the camp, and I think of all the kids we had in camp over the years, and that's how we recruited so many of them. Is we watched them when they were in that third practice, and it was 90 some degrees, and it's a little bit of a difference nowadays, and we'll get to it a little bit later as we're talking. But now the kids that come, they come for 3 hours, and you find out how fast they are, and you measure them, I guess, and so the world has changed. But going back to your point about that intentional learning about it's not about me, it's about the team. It's probably the most difficult thing we have in society, in human civilization. I found it difficult. It's difficult in sports. Everyone wants to play. Everyone, wants to be all American, be noticed, and so forth. So you had to intentionally work on team every day, and I really believe it was important back when I coached. And over my shoulder here, you see Santonio. I thought since I had one of the great receivers at Northern Illinois, I'd have one of the great receivers over my shoulder, Santonio Holmes. But we worked on it every day. Then I became a university president. It was hard to intentionally get everyone understanding that, yes, your college is important or your department's important, but what's important is the university. And now I'm in a state, and it's the enormity of 12 million people. We have so many needs. And the great thing about our governor, Governor DeWine, we hear 1,000 times a day, I want every single Ohioan to reach their God-given potential. It's about the team. It's not about me. And that's why we decided to have this podcast. We said, you know what? There's lots of podcasts about leadership and how do I raise up and how do I become something. But we want to talk about how do we become something. So what was the biggest lesson learned while you were playing with Coach Novak, who's one of the greatest coaches of all time? Lessons of team from Joe Novak.
Yeah, I think one of the greatest things I've ever learned from him that will never leave me is there's two things that create a locker room and connect people is empathy and gratitude.
Hmm.
And if you can have those two things, you can have a locker room. And then from there, you can build on the trust factor of things that you say have to be real. For it to be real, you have to be transparent. I get paid a lot of money And I tell our players all the time, I get paid a lot of money to do one thing, tell you the truth. And I said, that is very difficult, whether it's camp or whether it's recruiting or whether
Yeah.
it's a team meeting, whether it's at practice. I said, you know how exhausting it is to tell the truth all the time? Because you know everyone doesn't want to hear it. But eventually you have to get to the trust factor. And trust comes down in our program to three things: time, consistency, and proof. And once you have that and you establish that, then what you say and how you say it has definitions behind it, or it has there's a believability behind it,
Yeah.
and you get everybody rowing that boat. But there's process to all that, because people have a hard time communicating, right?
Mhm.
And just in today's world, and
Yeah.
I've noticed with a lot of our players, like, there's always a space between two people. This person's talking to this person, and this person's trying to get this person to believe what this person wants, and we're both going back and forth, but there's always a space in between it. The longer that you don't communicate, that you're not aligned, that some people say on the same page, that you're not knowing that it's not about you, it's about other people, that gap just gets bigger and
Yeah.
bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's human nature. And that space in between, the old Dave Matthews song, is always filled with negativity. So if you're
Yeah.
not being transparent, you're not being trustworthy, you're not talking, communicating, connecting with your players, you're going to lose that really quick. I mean, I took a lesson even from you. My office is literally right behind this wall is the team meeting room. I do not have an assistant. I do not have a secretary. They can walk in here every single minute of every day and feel free to come in and talk about anything.
Yeah.
But I think we're getting farther and farther away from that. Head coaches are hiring GMs to handle the players because some people don't want to deal with it. They
Right.
don't want to deal with the emotions anymore. They don't want to deal with the contracts. They don't want to deal with paying the players. It's just another evolution of college football that is just another piece. And at that point, gives people an excuse either to bail out of what they have to do and maybe want to do, or it brings them closer to it and brings that relationship even closer. So, but Joe Novak taught me that a long time ago, that empathy and gratitude. And if you can have those two things, you can have a tight locker room. And I do believe, we haven't won a national title here since the 60s, but we're winning at a rate that's historic for the
Yeah.
period we've been.
No
And
question.
hopefully years 9 through 14 will even be higher than that, because we are selecting kids that believe in gratitude, empathy, and have it as we recruit. Because we don't recruit, we consider it selecting and fitting. We don't ever want to convince a kid to come here. So it's all transparent, it's all open, it's all authentic, it's real. I'm not for everybody, but we want that authenticity, we want that empathy, we want that gratefulness already to be in their hearts. And then you have a chance to connect as many people as you can.
Well, you brought up the fact of, winning. Well, I've always been a believer that our greatest victories are what our guys are doing later in life. I know the banners, are important, and the statistics and the record and all that. That's very, very important. And we didn't apologize for wanting to win, but the victories are what our guys are doing later. And that's why I'm so proud of you and all of our guys that have come through our staff and who are now out making a difference. I'm proud of our former players. Santonio is the wide receiver coach at Central State University right now. Just having fun, making a difference with those kids, and that's what winning's all about. And so you and I were together for one season, but I felt like I knew you for 2 or 3 years earlier because of your pesky gnat thing you talked about. Because Mike Sabach, one of your former coaches at Northern Illinois, I think by the time you were a sophomore, he was telling me, hey, I got a guy who's going to be on your staff. I got a guy who's going to be on your staff. And I'd say, okay, Mike. And Mike and I went to college together, and he was my little brother in the fraternity, and so I love him dearly. And he kept saying it and kept saying it. And then remind me again of that midnight hour, how you ended up, you got banged up, I think, in San Francisco, and we were the good fortune of that injury.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it kind of right on the head. First of all, I would show you this, but I'm looking at it. I have 6 letters on in my office. When I was a student athlete, like you said, at Northern, and Mike Sabach and Joe Novak knew I wanted to coach. My dad killed bugs for a living. My mom was a teacher's aide. Like, I had no coaching except the coaches that I knew in high school. And
Yep.
so when I got to college, I was like, I'm going to write every Division I coach that I want to coach. And so I got writing. And I have the 6 letters I got back. Joe Paterno wrote me back. Mac Brown wrote me back. Kurt Ferentz, one of our rivals, wrote me back.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Richt at Georgia wrote me back. And it was just, and that's why I write back everybody that ever sends me a
Yep.
letter.
Yep.
And, so it's an amazing story of, and coach, that's why I wear a tie. And a lot of people don't know that I wear a tie for you and Mike Nolan, because it was all connected. So I get cut. Mike Nolan calls me to his office in San Francisco. This is year 3. And I've had 5 shoulder surgeries up to this point. And, he kind of looked at me and just like, and his wife's in the office with him. And I'm like, this is humiliating. You're going to cut me in front of your wife. This is, and Kathy, they're up. Kathy and Coach are still such great close friends, and he comes out and visits all the time. And so, long story short, he cuts me, and I'm like, well, there I go, there goes my dream. And he's like, but I'm gonna offer you a coaching job, and I'm like, a coaching job? Yep. He's like, I don't have one. I'm just gonna create one.
Mm.
So, of course, I think I'm a player. I think I should be, I should be getting a $50 million contract now. Somebody's going to take me off this, off the Niners because I'm in high demand. Well, I go to the Bears. I don't pass the physical. I come back to San Francisco. Coach Nolan's like, do you want the job? And I said, just give me one more day to think about it. Because I wanted to make sure I was completely done with playing.
Yep.
And that's when I got a call from you. And you talk about fate and the intervention of like, hold on, that's a great offer, but this is what you're going to have to do to really separate yourself from the NFL to college. And you probably are going to make the biggest impact in college versus the NFL. And I remember praying that night, I really do, about just show me guidance, and I literally, out of the heavens, you call me. I've never talked to you. You haven't talked to me. You
Right.
have a GA job open. The GA job needs to be filled fast. Mike Sabak said, hire the guy. I didn't
Right.
even interview.
Right.
You hire me out of nowhere, coach. And I still am to this day, just in incredible debt. But it is amazing how fate intervenes, that if I
Right.
didn't get cut that day, which was one of the worst days of my playing career that I thought, and if you didn't call me the second you called me, this all could be completely different. And I wouldn't know any different,
Right.
but it's amazing how amazing my life has become and how blessed I am and what I'm doing and the platform I have to impact people because of your phone call. So it's a great lesson to everybody. We need everyone. We need somebody to get us to where we need to be.
Yep.
It's got to be our dream. It's got to be really important to us, but we're all going to need somebody to help us get there. And
Yep.
that's why I wear a tie, to make sure that people never forget that Jim Tressel and Mike Nolan got me to where I am.
Well, I tell you what, as you say, I didn't know you, but the minute you hit campus, I knew you had one gear, and it was full speed, and that was fun to watch. And if you remember that year, we were under construction in our football facility. We were in temporary quarters over there, and I mean it was kind of disarray, and it,
Right.
it was wild. And so as you think back to that year, uh, give me one lesson on team you learned at Ohio State.
Yeah. First of all, I think you were the master at it. I don't feel like I've ever been around somebody who truly cared about players more, and I mean that with the authenticity and the realness. I do remember, we went to the national championship game
Yeah,
that year, and I
yeah,
remember you kind of did a good thing and a bad thing for me, because we were going through the season. I was like, shoot, this coaching thing ain't that hard. You show up, you roll the balls out, you
yeah,
play, you're good. You're up by 20, you put somebody else in. That's really what I was sitting there thinking, like, wow, that was very unique. I do remember this though, because we had such good players, coach. Like, we had
yeah,
such good players, and what an amazing staff we had.
yeah.
And one of the lessons I learned was in the national championship game from you. And I share this with a lot of people, because at the time when you're a young coach, when this is your first year coaching or your first year of business and somebody's mentoring you, which you did and your staff did to me, you put them on such a pedestal. And one of the greatest things that ever happened when I was at Ohio State was during the national championship game. I think it was around the first quarter. We had a fourth down that we went for it in our own zone, and I
Mm-hmm.
remember thinking to myself, this is not necessarily trestle ball, right, and how we've got here. But I remember you going on the headset, and I've never heard this from you, and you go, boys, if we don't get this, we're in trouble. And it was such the most authentic, real, transparent head coach comment to his entire staff of how important this is.
Yeah.
And we didn't get it, and it didn't go well.
Yep.
And we knew we were in trouble at that moment, but it was almost like we were so good that if you didn't bring your A game and you didn't uh, do everything you were supposed to, you didn't execute at a high level, you weren't connected on that day. I remember losing after the starting kickoff return, right? I mean, we lose Teddy Ginn. The whole game plan's around Teddy Ginn.
Yep.
We lose Teddy Ginn. And the next thing you know, were the guys behind him really ready for that moment? And like
Yep.
maybe they said they were. And it was to me that was the greatest lesson because it was going to take that entire team to win that
Right.
national title. And when we looked across, it did take their entire team to win that national title. And um, that was the moment I was like, wow, it doesn't matter how good you are, skillful. It doesn't matter how, how fast you are. Or it doesn't matter how good you've done during the season. Every game, that talent as a team, which is a choice, is completely connected and everything
Yep.
has to be there 100%, or anybody can beat you on any Saturday. So it was an amazing moment for me that I still tell people. I learned from you that it can happen to the best of people. I remember making that comment after Bowling Green came here and beat us, um, that we were supposed to win. I made that comment, and it really has stayed with
Yep.
me forever. But more importantly, the caring piece of where your office was. I've never seen somebody care for players more than you, and I've never seen more players in an office as a head coach than yours. And I thought that was always important to connect to make the best team possible.
Hey teammates, I want to tell you about a project we're working on with Youngstown State University. One of the ways Ellen and I have decided to give back is through the Tressel Institute for Leadership and Teamwork. We've collected a set of successful business and nonprofit leaders to serve as guest servant leaders in partnership with the Sokolov Honors College to teach university students teamwork, leadership, and personal skills. We teach from a foundation built on gratitude, excellence, hope, love, and selflessness. If you're a young person or parent helping to search for a unique college experience, you can learn more at tresselinstitute.ysu.edu or ysu.edu. Links will be provided in the show notes. Yep. Well, that's why you're there. That's what you love. People ask me all the time, do you miss coaching? And, I miss sitting with the kids. I miss sitting with their goal sheets. I remember sitting with you talking on your goal sheet, and you said you wanted to be a head coach by age 35. I said, this guy's like 24 years old, and he's already got, he's going to be here, here, here. And then we always talked about the plan. Okay, good. That's your goal. What's the plan to achieve it? So after that '06 season, we had to take the next step in the plan, and thank goodness you got to go back home to your alma mater.
Yep.
And it was for Coach Novak and then also Coach Kill. You got to work for them both?
I did. Got to work for both of them, and it's interesting going back for the coach that you played for.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got 5 staff members now that played for me here.
Mm-hmm.
I've got one that still played for me at Northern Illinois. I've got guys that are, once they're done in the NFL, will come here and start coaching. So Joe Novak gave me that, where
Yeah.
my first opportunity was back at my alma mater, our starting linebacker. He has never coached, but you know what? His first job is in the Big Ten, and he's been beyond ready for that ever since he was a player. And he taught me that. So I can find these great coaches that are unbelievable players right here in our own backyard, and we have our own farm system. And I
Yeah.
think that's kind of what Joe Novak created with all those great coaches that he had. And he I'm still a pretty old school guy. I'm only 44. I've been doing it 13 years, but um, I have a lot of my new school things just because you have to adapt to, I think, the surrounding
Sure.
feel of college football and the way young people change. But I'm still my old school values, and they come from guys like you and Joe Novak. And what an opportunity to go in there and be the wide receiver coach and be full of all that piss and vinegar. And
Yeah.
I think I'm a different coach now than I was then. I don't wear cleats anymore. I gave that up a few years ago after
Right.
my 5th pulled hamstring in practice. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm looking weaker than I'm looking tough. So,
Yeah.
but Joe Novak gave me that opportunity. And like I said, we always need somebody. And if it wasn't for that opportunity, then he retires. Then Jerry retains me,
Yeah.
which he didn't have to do. And I know there's been a lot of things that Jerry has said, but I've always respected Jerry, and I think it's always hard when somebody comes into a program that you have, and I
Sure.
know that's hard for everybody. It'll be hard
Yeah.
for me if whether I leave Minnesota or they get rid of me. It'll be hard for somebody to come in and take over your baby, and I understand everybody's feelings towards that. And then I had an opportunity to truly do something that everybody in your circle's like, wait a second, I don't know if you should do that. You've never like been out to Jersey. You've never lived in Jersey. You never worked for Coach Shiano. You never,
Yeah.
and I was like, well, my whole life I've been told not to do something. I usually did it, and Greg Schiano took me from a boy to a man. He really did as a coach, and really
Yeah.
knew where I wanted to go, and got me there in a very different way than maybe other people had got me there, and showed me a completely different side of, again, we're very different people, but gave me a lot of things in the detail and the organization and how everything matters. And I took that from him, and still use a lot of that to this day of the detail and organization.
If you think about the takeaway with Coach Novak bringing you back, it wasn't because you were this skilled coach. It was because of who you were, the kind of person you were. And I tell people all the time when they're thinking about trying to select staff, whether it's coaching or any other world, you don't need to be a rocket scientist. You don't need to have this resume that you're a guru. The first thing I need to know about you is what kind of person are you? Do you care about the people you're working with? Do you care about the team, the company, the community, whoever it is you're serving? Are you that person, that has that gratitude as you talked about and that empathy? One of the great lessons I've been learning working with Governor DeWine is that empathy he has for every single person in this state. We just attracted Anduril, which is a company that makes the high-tech defense drone things. I mean, crazy big. Intel making the chips coming in here. But he cares about every kid on foster care. He cares about every kid in children's services. He cares about every community. So that's why Coach Novak brought you back, because he knew what kind of person you were. That's why Coach Kill kept you. Sometimes, though, you do branch out to try to learn new things in the business, and that's what Coach Shiano did for you. And so you were with him at Rutgers and Tampa, correct?
Correct. Yeah, both places.
So
Yep.
biggest lesson at Rutgers, because that's a different place than Northern Illinois or Minnesota or Ohio State.
Yeah. Coach everything, and everything matters.
Mm-hmm.
One thing will always affect the other thing. And the attention to detail, it was absolutely incredible there. I mean, every second of every minute, you're squeezing all the juice from the orange. Again, a lot of places I had been as a full-time coach are always maybe a little bit overachieving.
Mm-hmm.
You got to find a way to find the 1%. You got to find a way to find the edge, create the edge. Smarter players or better players is what I learned from him. Situational football. I mean, we were so good at situational football, and I feel like we're really good at that here, because you got to
Yep.
win in the margins. You got to win the middle eight. You got to be really good in 2 minute, 4 minute. Your players have to understand most games are lost in college football, right?
That's right.
And if the game's won, it's actually lost less than the other team. So that person screwed it up a little less than the other person screwed it up. So they actually won. I learned from Greg, how do you win games?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you go out there and win and take the game? And there's nothing somebody can do about it. And that was something that I needed. Like, I needed that if I ever wanted to be a young head coach. And I tell people that all the time. I left a boy. I really did. And
Mm-hmm.
I came out of Tampa as a man. It was some of the most challenging times in my life. But personally losing Colton. But you talk about all these these faith-based things, coach. And I remember as when I lost Colton, the story of Row the Boat, we were at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Well, if you add that up, that's chop. And Chiano has keep chopping.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about the coincidence of
Right,
that,
right,
like
right.
you're supposed to be there. And it's horrific and it's hard, and you're dealing with the loss of your
Yep.
son, but you're also in this environment that's just keep chopping. And that was where I really said, okay, I've got to create something for Cole.
Yep.
And that's where Row the Boat came from. But it was one of the most demanding environments I had ever been in. And I've been in some real demanding environments, but this one was very unique as a player, as a coach. And I watched a man as a coach work just as hard as the players, work just as hard as the expectation, set that thing so high. And he worked for the same standard he created. And that's why I have so much respect for him. We're competitors now,
Yeah, right, right.
which is always unique. But, I can't thank him enough. And he did not have to bring me to Tampa. I still remember I took two jobs in between that, Coach Tressel. And I think I even talked to you at
Yeah,
that
I was
time. I
going to
was
say I
so
remember
lost.
that. Yeah, I remember that.
And the NFL's got this chart, and it takes a while for somebody to be hired. And I got a family, and I'm sitting there going, okay, am I coming or not? He's like, I'll let you know in a week or two. A week or two? I don't have a job. So I remember I had talked to Paul Rose about going to Iowa State. I had talked to Dave Dorn about going back to Northern Illinois. In
Hmm.
fact, I did go back to Northern Illinois for a day.
That's what I thought. Yeah, I thought you went
And
back there. Yeah.
you talk about losing your status in one day. All you've done for Northern Illinois, you lose it in one day, because that next day I left and went to Tampa when he offered me the job, and I
Yeah.
just had to. And it was unfortunate that I had to leave after taking the Northern Illinois OC job. And Coach Dorn and I have we've made up since
That's,
then. But I remember he was pretty upset with me, and rightfully so. And I get that now as a head coach. But
yeah.
what an opportunity for me to go to the NFL, and then had changed the course of my life after that, becoming the youngest head football coach in the country, as I told you I wanted to do.
I
It's
know.
so
It was
crazy.
on your goal sheet. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So, quick one before we get to your head coaching time. Biggest difference in your mind trying to build a team in college and the time you spent in the NFL? What's the difference in team building?
Well, I think the time you have with them. I think
Hmm.
that's critical. Right now, we're allowed to. We see our players in January. They're here for school. You're working with them in Indy and meetings in January and February. Then you get spring ball, and spring ball's still spring ball, right? And they're still always
Hmm.
around. I mean, the NFL guys are not even going. They haven't even been in their organization since January,
Right.
right? So I mean, they haven't even seen them, and then they'll come back and they're allowed to do a little bit. So I think that we have a life program. We don't have a football program, and so you're constantly building these life programs and
Yep.
life connections, and we do player activities once a month. And I know they can afford it, but we're doing it all together. Our players are going down for spring break and working out together in Florida and Georgia that they never used to do.
Hmm.
It's just creating that. The biggest difference to me is you're around them every day. It's like the CEO being in the building every day of the organization that he's with, instead of, okay, the CEO lives here and the company's here, or they're never in the office. I think that's one of the biggest differences is everybody that's in the organization, Salesforce, marketing, recruiting, development, the product, our players, believe it or not. I mean, that's our product, our players. I mean,
Yep.
it's crazy. They're in the building, they're working at their craft. I think the time is the biggest difference in creating that. And you have longer to create that life program and that connectivity than I think you do in the NFL.
When I think of the difference is I would use the word time also, but I would say it's the time in their life that we have them. And that's what I realized that, uh, I was made to be an educator. I was made to be, I would do a terrible job teaching elementary school or middle school or maybe even high school. I feel like I was made to work with 18 to 22-year-olds, and because that time in their life, um, when they leave home and they all of a sudden they're starting to think about different things than the prom or whatever. And so the time you have them as a college coach to me is so critical, and that's one of the things that makes me a little nervous about what's going on today is because you're not getting them for 4 and 5 years. And I can picture guys; they were so different when they were freshmen, than when they were seniors. And I guess what you have to do is have that faith that you're handing them off to someone else who's going to, keep building that. But so I remember talking to Kathy Beauregard, the athletic director at Western
Right.
Michigan, and
Yeah.
she's talking about hiring this young. How old were you? 32?
Yeah. Just turned 32.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 32-year-old guy to be the head coach, and I'd known Kathy since back when I was the AD at Youngstown State back in the day, and I remember talking with her, and she just had this feeling that PJ Fleck was the right guy, and I could do nothing other than uh, agree with that and approve that and put a stamp on it. And I talked to her a little bit about it. I said, look, I only had a year with him, but what I had in that year, I can tell you, he's going to be a great one. What was it about Western Michigan? And I know you went 111 and then up the thing. What was the key in your mind about building that team?
Yeah, well, first of all, I appreciate everything you've done for me because I have no idea to this day how Kathy still hired me. And we laugh about it all the time. And you talk about a change agent and what she was able to do.
Yeah, she's a
I
great
mean,
one.
she really is. I mean, you're blazing her own trail, and she always has. And she's always
Yep.
kind of done things a little bit different.
And she worked her way up. I remember when she was assistant AD and then the
That's
AD,
right.
and
She
that's
was
the
a
way.
gymnast there, and
Yep.
you talk about a trailblazer. And she always kind of did things a little bit different. And I remember getting the call from her, and I'm like, listen, I'm in a really good position. I love the NFL. I'm coaching at the time, a $50 million guy, which was a lot of money back then, right? And Vincent Jackson, and God rest his soul, what an amazing human being, and got a chance to coach him and a Pro Bowler. And I'm like, maybe the NFL is my path. And I said, but to be honest, like, I'd love to talk to you, but I don't know much about like the job. I can't sit there and say I'm going after the job. I'm not like, it wasn't something I applied for. She just called me randomly. And, what interested me was all the haven'ts. And then I remember I talked to you and I said, well, what do you think? And you go, well, I got a little bit of news for you. He goes, every job's open for a reason. He goes,
Mm-hmm.
don't ever
Mm-hmm.
forget that.
That's
And I
right.
haven't forgot that to this day.
Yep.
It's either it got really good and somebody found something better and now
Yep.
it's at the top and that's going to be hard to maintain,
Right.
or you're going to have to build it. Either way, it's hard.
That's
So
right.
it's open for a reason. Somebody thought it was either not good enough or somebody did everything they could at it, but it's always open for a reason. And I remember the challenge of all the haven'ts. Kathy came in and said, we haven't done this, we haven't done that, we haven't done this, we haven't done that. She wasn't talking about all the haves that we had to uphold. It was all the things that she wanted to recreate or create that haven't been done in such a long time. And I felt like that job just needed me. It needed energy.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
needed row the boat. It needed Kalamazoo's an unbelievable community. And I
Mm-hmm.
always knew playing against them, it was a great environment, and it was in a great little town
Yep.
of Kalamazoo. And I knew it was the one for me. And I know that doesn't really sound like because at 32, I mean, you don't get offered many head coaches, and I do think that other advice. The second thing you said to me is, I go, "What do you think about the job?" He goes, "Well, who do you think you are?" That was from you. Like, who do you think you are? There's only 130 of these in the world.
Right.
Like, what's good? What's bad? What's elite? What's average? There's one of 132. Do you want it or not? And that's why when I was like, you know what, the opportunity doesn't come around very often. I'm not some cocky guy to think I can pass on all these jobs and they'll always be there. And so I said, well, listen, if no better time than the present, and I'm either going to go in there and do it, or I'm going to be maybe the shortest tenured coach in the country and maybe never become a head coach again. But the roll of the dice and the risk was worth it because I had been around so many people that I learned from in such a short amount of time, and I knew my plan of what I wanted to do, and I knew who I had to be around to do it, and I was, I guess, smart enough to absorb all that. And I made my whole head coach book, your man manual, all of these things that I kept and created and built into the hyper culture is what we talk about.
So, talk to us about you're at the University of Minnesota. You're in this great city, Twin Cities. You're at this extraordinary, R1 research university, big time school, big time conference. But what you tried to do to build a team that was bigger than just your football team, that was going to capture the hearts and the minds and the souls of the Children's Hospital, your foundation. Talk about, as you went there, what the game plan was to make a team that was a way bigger team than anyone would believe.
Yeah, this was probably bigger than I actually expected and thought. It was a challenge to do it in Kalamazoo, especially when you're 1-11. I got done at Western Michigan and 1-11. Everybody's like, "All right, row the boat didn't work. What are you gonna do now? Mow the grass? Like we're gonna mow the yard? We're gonna,
Right.
touch the sun? What are we doing?" Like I'm like, that's what row the boat's all about. And I remember looking at my staff at Western and even my players at times, like, am I the only one? Like, do they really believe like I believe? Um, and a lot of them did. And you got to
Yeah.
find out who's actually in the boat and
Yeah.
who's not in the boat,
Amen.
because those tough times, they do bring to the surface something. They always bring something to the surface.
Right.
It's not always good. And you have to respond to that as a coach. And I remember here, I was 1-11, went to 13-0 at Western Michigan. I'm coming off a 13-1 season, just lost in the Cotton Bowl. And you're sitting there saying, wow, it took this long. I'm a really good coach, man, coach of the year. Like, and then bang, you walk into Minnesota and nobody cares. We have a divided team. They're boycotted the bowl game. There's a
Yeah.
big sexual assault case. Half the team showed up to the first team meeting. I remember going back to the hotel night one, and I told Heather, I'm like, did I do the right thing? I mean, oh my, did I make the biggest mistake of my life? And again, power of prayer. A few things happened that over the next few days that I was like, I'm exactly where I'm
Yeah.
supposed to be. And that's at least what I can always say about my life. God has placed me exactly where I've needed to be for as long as He's needed me to do it. And it's hard for me to understand at times. But I think the biggest challenge was we were so divided when I first got here,
Hmm.
for right, wrong, and different. But it was just it was it, and I was like, how are we going to do this, let alone the donors, the fans, the community? I don't even know anybody at a children's hospital here. How are we going to make all those those connections? And you just start.
Yep.
You put one foot in front of the other and you just go. But I remember it was all the emails, and part of the reason I brought up the letters earlier is because I write back everybody, no matter if it's good or bad.
Yep.
They all get something back. But we get so many letters and so many emails about somebody going through something, or they've heard about Row the Boat. And we send out so many oars every day. Puzzle piece ones for autism awareness, red ones for American Heart Association ones, pink ones for breast cancer, yellow ones for troops that come home. And we do it unsolicited. And
Yeah.
we're not, you don't have to pay for it. We just send them out. And I think that was one of the biggest things that we did behind branding our building, uh, seeing who's in the boat, who's out of the boat. It was really just being as authentic as you can be. And everybody was trying to get you off of the wall.
Right.
It's almost like the story of Nehemiah, man. They were just, everybody here was just trying to get you to show that you're fake or you're a
Right.
fraud, or pull
Sure.
you off the wall,
Sure.
compliment you, destroy you, stop building the wall. And sooner or later, like 42 days, I mean, it took a lot longer than that. You look up, you're like, okay, we got pretty good walls at least now. So we can
Hmm.
keep all that out and we can start building something really special. But like Kathy Beauregard, Mark Coyle is a rock star. We've been together from day one. And the greatest thing I have here at Minnesota, and part of the reason I'm still here, is he allows me to be me. As simple as that sounds,
Hmm.
he allows me to be the most authentic, genuine me. And I just think there's too many people in business, coaching, maybe politics, that try to be something that they're not.
Right.
And I think that's where we started here. Just whether you like it or not, you either agree or not, you're going to love our players off the field. You're going to love our people as men,
Yep.
as women, as adults, as what they do to the community, what they do for the community. And we started there first, not necessarily with the football piece.
Yep. Now, there's no question, and I remember going through the same thing. We were 7-5 our first year at Ohio State, and it was like, oh yeah, all that block O of life stuff, all that, this and that. They were looking to see, do you really believe in that, and you know what's funny? I think 25 years later, when I see all the guys, they don't talk about any of the games. They
Right.
don't talk about whether we won or we lost, you know, or how long they played in the NFL, or any of that stuff. They talk about the lessons they learned and what they're doing with their children and what they're doing in their community, and that's what winning is, and I think that's what we've got to make sure that with every team we're trying to build, Whether it's a business, it's not about the spreadsheets and the profit margins and so forth. It's what's the difference you're making with the people that are a part of your team, and talk a little bit about that children's hospital there in Minnesota, because I know you know it's just part of your family, your Gopher family, and the difference they make in that area.
Yeah, the Masonic Children's Hospital here at the University of Minnesota, it's a powerful force in our community.
Yeah,
And I know there's other hospitals. I mean, this is almost the epicenter of medicine in the United States, with the Mayo Clinic
hmm,
being so
sure.
close. And but when I was in the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, with the Colton situation, you don't know what you're going to feel, because you're walking in with something that you know you won't walk out with. It's the most surreal
Hmm.
feeling in the world. And you go in there and you're there 2 days. And when I came out, I was fearful of how I'd feel coming out of that hospital. I was the most inspired,
Hmm.
motivated, driven, confident father, coach, whatever you want to call it. And it was because of the people that work inside the hospital. It wasn't the hospital, it wasn't the research. The research couldn't bring my son back,
Yeah.
but it was the people that made me want to do something because of the impact they made, the nurses, the doctors, the way they made me feel. And that's our point of as a coach. We just had 185 players back for a spring practice.
Hmm.
We couldn't get 5 people back when I first got here for an alumni visit. And you're right, none of them talked about any game.
No.
They talk about what I said to them, or what an event they did together. They talk about a team meeting. They talked about a team event. They talked about something that happened in their life that one of our coaches or other players helped them out with. They learned that they taught the lessons. They bust each other's chops about certain things. They bust my chops about
Of
something.
course.
And you know what? It brought me back to that. It wasn't about just the alumni in a football program. It's as deep and as spiritual as walking into a hospital knowing you're not going to bring that child home, and walking out feeling that you were a part of something bigger than yourself, and they gave you the inspiration. The people, because of how they handled the situation, made you do something that's life changing for other people. I mean, that is
Yep.
humans. Like, that is the power of human beings. And I hope that what our charity does at the Row the Boat, or at the Row the Boat Fund, the Fleck Family Fund at Masonic Children's Hospital, is it's not about the research. That's really important. Like, there's so many organizations that do that, and that's imperative that we have that. But our foundation goes right into the families,
Yeah.
so they don't have to be separate. So they don't have to worry about their mortgage. So they don't have to worry about gas going to and from the hospital. So they don't have to worry about all these other things while their sons or daughters are in a hospital for 18 total months in a room that's 24 by 24. I don't think we ever have that type of perspective. So our players do so much over there, because that's what will ultimately fulfill your life, are the experiences, the moments and memories, the people's lives you change, the platform you use to shape other people's lives. That is the only thing in my life that has ever, ever, ever brought me true fulfillment,
Right.
true
Right.
joy. Happiness comes and goes, cars come and go, houses come and go, money comes and goes. Uh, but that is always full if
Yeah.
you're doing it. And we had a patient here, and then also a teammate of ours, Casey O'Brien, who's battling cancer for the seventh time, unfortunately, and is in really one tough battle. But that experience brought our players so close for so many years, and still does.
Hmm.
And he's involved in the Children's Hospital, and the impact that Row the Boat at the Masonic Children's Hospital has had, hopefully brings hope and encouragement, keeps families together. And ultimately, I ended up, being divorced, and my family somewhat split apart. And I'd be lying if I said that wasn't a small piece of it.
Hmm.
Um, because I think that happens. People go two different ways on tragedy, and
Right.
hopefully, because of our organization and our foundation, we can keep those families together, and we can keep them from having those types of things that split people apart. Um, and it's just, I'm blessed every day to even have an impact over there. I have to pinch myself, and my wife Heather is so involved in the Row the Boat Foundation and Fund, and it's It truly is amazing because of the people that you meet and the patients that you meet. Every time we have bull rings, there's certain patients we still celebrate bull rings with,
Hmm.
um, that are still part of our football family, that have beat cancer, have overcome multiple heart surgeries and heart transplants.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's what these kids overcome is astonishing and amazing. And we just do a tiny, small piece of that to help them.
Well, we always say that every person deserves to be a part of a team that's trying to make a difference for others. And that's why I think sports are so important. That's why bands, that's why engineering Baja race teams. I don't care what team you're on. Everyone needs to be a part of a team that's going and finding strength with one another and then trying to make a difference for others. And so, last one for you. We're going into 2025. Different times. We won't even get into the conversation about how the times have changed. But what do you like so far about the growth of the 2025 Gopher team?
What they value.
Hmm.
That's what I love the most about this team. I don't know what the wins will be.
Yeah.
And I can't sit there and say, I don't care what the wins will be, because then, alumni get all mad and everything. Because I do care about,
Sure you do.
going
Yep.
out and having good performances. But this team values all the right things. And I think that in today's world, whatever you value will show.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that other things aren't important, and they don't think some of those things aren't important. But the first three, they value all the right things. And that's why I'm so proud of them. And they're so fun to coach.
Yep.
I mean, coach, you would love coaching this team because we're doing spring so different because I have to pull off of these guys because even when we're going half speed in a group install, they're still ready to rip each other's faces off. And it's what they value is really important to me. And that's where we go into the recruiting piece of who you select. I've never asked somebody about a resume, even a staff member. I do what you do. I ask them, tell me about your life from birth till now. Go. That's the only question I ask them.
Yep.
And then from there, you can find out what they actually value.
Yep.
And whatever they're talking about, you're going to inherit. So if it aligns with the values that you want on your team, then they're going to be the right fit. If they don't align to the value, then they could be an infection to your team. And I think that's where, we have choices as coaches. But I can find 30 people around the United States of America and sometimes outside the country that fit our values. I promise you, I can
That's
find
right.
30 of them.
That's right. Well, we say all the time, we've said this on many of our episodes, is if you really work hardest on the things you value and on the things that are really important, the things that you do, you'll be fine. You'll win enough games. You'll sell enough, whatever. But if you don't work on the things that you value, the things that are important, you might temporarily win enough games, or you might temporarily have the balance sheet look the way you want. And that's the fun of being a part of a team. And that's why we love having It's All About the Team. And we're so excited that you spent this hour with us, and go out there and have your practice. And we'll be rooting for the Gophers. And you're the man. Appreciate you.
Coach, I really appreciate everything. I got to call you Coach, President Tressel, Lieutenant Governor Tressel. I mean, you got all the titles now, but I really can't thank you enough for what you've done for my life. I truly, truly mean that on the highest level, and I respect the hell out of you and absolutely love you. So thank you for all you've done for my life, and thanks for caring about the teams that you care about. And,
I love you, and I love team, and viewers, until the next time, remember, it's all about the team.